Hi, I'm James Hewitt. I'm the Chief Architect for Cloud Pak for Integration. IBM Cloud Pak for Integration uses Keycloak as its IAM component to handle things like users, like roles and permissions, and also to connect to third-party identity providers like Okta. In this video, we're really looking at how to connect Okta to Cloud Pak for Integration so that you can log into Cloud Pak for Integration using your Okta users, and it does this by using Keycloak as that component in the middle. Most of this video is not particularly CP/FRI specific. It would apply to any application that's using Keycloak to log in and provide tokens and that kind of management. So you could apply the same technique to pretty much any Keycloak installation and hook it up to Okta. I'm going to start by sharing. I'm just going to use the out-of-the-box integration admin user. That's the user that we also give permissions, give Keycloak permissions to, so that they can go in and configure third-party identity providers and things like that. If I go into my Cloud Pak for Integration instance and scroll down here to access control, you'll see it drops me into Keycloak. I'm in a Keycloak realm called IBM Cloud Pak, and I'm the integration administrator, and I've got enough roles to play with identity providers. So the first step is to go in here and say, what kind of identity provider do I want? In this instance, we're going to connect with SAML. You could also connect to Okta using OIDC, but it's SAML that we're going to use today. And there are a couple of bits of information in here that we need to give to Okta to configure the application so that it can be used with the Cloud Pak. So the first thing I'm going to do is quickly give it an alias, and the reason I want to do that first is that alias then appears in the redirect URIs and things, so I need to make sure that's correct when it gets to the Okta side. So I'm just going to copy that redirect URI because I know I'm going to need it, and I'm going to go into my Okta console. This Okta console is just for a development account that I'm just using for integration testing, just to make sure that all of our technologies work really well together. So if I go down to applications, I'm going to add a new application to my Okta. I'm going to say I want to do it using SAML, and in here I'm going to say this is for I, right? And click next. Now I need to configure SAML. So the single sign-on URL is the same as the redirect URI I had from Keycloak, so I'm going to paste that in. I'm also going to go back to Keycloak and grab my service provider entity ID, which I also need down here in the audience URI, SP entity ID. So those are the only two bits of information that I need to give to Okta from Keycloak. All of the other settings should be fine as they are. We'll come back and play with some of them later. I'm just going to click next. And then this is just feedback for Okta, because Okta want to understand what people are connecting to. So I'll basically skip that step and click on finish. So that's the Okta side done. Okta now has an application called CP/FRI, which we're going to use to log into. One of the things I will need to do is to go to assignments and assign. I'm just going to say everyone in my organization. This Okta organization only has one user in it, my user, but I've just said everyone can use the CP/FRI application in my Okta organization. So back to sign on, and over here I can click on view SAML setup instructions, and this gives me the data that I need to configure CP/FRI, or really to configure Keycloak, because it's Keycloak handling all of this. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy the IDP metadata instead of going and copying the individual values. So I'm going to go back to the Keycloak UI and down here. So Keycloak has two options. You can either use an entity descriptor, which allows you to put in a URL and it will fetch that URL and use that data, or you can import config from a file. So I'm going to instead upload data from a file. First thing I need to do is save that file. So just in the background, I've just saved that data that I copied from Okta into a file. And I'm going to click on Browse. And I'm going to select that file. And there we go. So you can see that by selecting that file that I saved that pasted data into, it's automatically filled in a bunch of other things for me. So the identity provider entity ID, single sign-on URL, stuff like that. And that should be all I need to do. So I'm just going to click on Add down here. Okay, and now we've created the identity provider, and we can go and give it a go. So I'm going to jump into a private window, and I'm going to go and attempt to log into the Cloud Pak for Integration. And now you can see instead of just logging in with a normal login form, I can also use an alternative login for Okta. If I click on Okta, that will redirect me to Okta, where I can log in using my Okta details. And we're in, except that Keycloak requires some account information. So it's got my username there that it's pulled in from Okta, but I could now change that if I wanted to. It also wants my email and my first name and last name. And if I submit that, oh, that already exists. That's no use. So it's going to be a problem. I think this probably already exists because I was playing with that before, and it hasn't been removed. So let's sort this problem out anyway. I'm going to go to my users, and one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete that user from a previous test. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some more configuration. If I go back into Okta and look at my CP4i application, one of the other things I can do is I can go and edit the settings. So I can go and edit the SAML settings. Now, in here, what I had previously done was not put any attributes through, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting some attributes in. So I'm going to put in email as a basic attribute, and I'm going to use the user email for that, and I'm going to put in first name as a basic attribute, and I'm going to use the user first name for that, and I'm going to put in last name as a basic attribute, and I'm going to use the user last name for that. So we now have some more SAML settings in there. Let's click on next to update the application. Click on finish again. Now I'm passing some information from Okta through the SAML connection into Keycloak. So I go back into Keycloak and go into my identity providers and into Okta, and I create a mapper so that we can use that new attribute from Okta in Keycloak. I'm going to call it email. I'm going to say attribute importer. The attribute I want to import is called email, and I want to put it in the user's email field. And then I obviously need to do the same thing for first name. And I'll need to do the same thing for last name. Okay, while I'm making mappers, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say all of my Okta users, I want to have some sort of permission on CP4i. So, call it CP4i viewer, and I'm going to want to make that into a hard-coded role and just say anyone coming in from Okta gets this role assigned to them by default. Go and find my integration viewer role, which is going to be down here somewhere. So here it is, and assign that to any user coming in from Okta. So hit save. Right, now I've done that configuration, I'm going to go back to my private window and log in again. And I want to log in instead of using a username and password. I want to go to Okta, and Okta will remember who I am, so it's automatically signing me into CP4i. And this time, instead of asking for an email and a first name and a last name, those attributes will all come straight through from Okta. And in here we have my Keycloak account, and it's got my name up there. Okay, so that's a quick overview of how to add a SAML provider to Keycloak, particularly when using it with CP4i. It will be the same as adding a SAML provider to any other Keycloak. I just need to substitute the CP4i client and roles in Keycloak for your own client and roles, and you'll be good to go. All right, thank you very much.